Property Unfiltered. Real investors, real stories, the good and the bad in property investing.
Well, good day everyone and welcome to Property Unfiltered. I'm Liam Garman, Managing Editor of Real Estate here at Momentum Media, the team that brings you smart property investment. And I'm joined by my co-host, as always, Simon Loo, Founder and Director of Housefinder. And we've got some Aussie patriots.
We do.
Some absolute heroes in the room with us. Simon, 100%. Would you like to introduce them?
Yeah, thank you so much. We've got Aaron.
Hello.
Who is a police officer. Is that correct?
Yep.
And we've got Valentina, who is also a ambulance, Ambo. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yes, correct. So these are clients and also friends of mine now.
Yep.
So they're, I thought it'd be good to get them in because they've got a very, very interesting property journey, and in terms of perhaps what motivated them to get into property, and also the transition as well from their current careers into the property space as well. So it'd be good to hear their stories for sure.
Yeah, so take us away. What got you guys interested in the world of property?
Initially, Aaron. But it was on emotion to start off with, really. We were following kind of the path. Oh, we've got full-time jobs now. We should probably look at buying a house, X, Y, Z. And we were looking at areas in Sydney that we could afford, down in the Shire. At the time, this was quite a few years ago, and we fell in love. We fell in love with a house, didn't we, Aaron?
We did. Classic emotional owner-occupier buyer.
Yeah. Aaron was imagining where the fish tank was going to go, where the bed would be. Oh, we could have this is the barbecue.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it was very sad. We got bought out from this particular unit. So we were a bit disappointed on that time, waited a little longer, and suddenly there was a dip in the market and houses started to come up on realestate.com within our budget.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we started looking and we found this beautiful property down in Kirrawee, and we maxed out what we could with the bank. They would only give us $860. And we went to the couple and we said, we know you want more, but this is all we have.
Yeah.
And they said yes. And we were planning to move in, but just some other circumstances, we weren't quite ready, settlement, leases, XYZ, and we kind of fell into rentvesting. So we moved into a different apartment. It was meant to be temporary. We got some a family, I think it was a single mum, into this house. She was comfortable. We kind of settled. And we went, you know what? We started realizing all of these values of rentvesting. Aaron was telling me about things like, at the time, negative gearing, tax depreciation. The mortgage wasn't too bad. And that's when I think we really started to understand tangibly some of the positives of this journey, property investing.
Absolutely. And what a great decision, I think, because the valuation on that, how much did you pay for it again? $860. Now it's worth $1.562 million.
That's crazy.
So that's really good. And when did you buy it?
It was 2019.
Okay, cool. So about 6 years.
Yeah.
6 years.
That's amazing.
That's crazy, isn't it? Yeah, thank you.
So where were you guys working at the time in 2019?
Same jobs.
Yeah, I think I was transitioning from the 000 call centre into a more physical role on road, and Aaron was somewhere.
I was in the police. So, yeah.
But you had the opportunity to rentvest where geographically you were going to be posted or stationed, I guess.
Yeah.
Close enough.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Would you say how demanding your jobs were or still are influenced you to look at investing in other sources of income so that you can maybe go, okay, one day this can be overbearing, this can be a little bit too much?
Yeah. I think when I was growing up, it was the influence from my dad, actually, in particular, regarding property investing. Like, my dad always told me, buy property, buy property, buy property. Like, it's a good investment strategy. So when I met Valentina, I already had that mentality ingrained in me.
Mm-hmm.
So I think for us, It's probably something that I always wanted to do. And before Valentina and I were together, not long before we were together, but back in 2013, I actually got pre-approved and looked at buying an investment property for myself. And back at the time, like I'll admit it, I just got scared.
Yeah.
And I did nothing. Kicking myself some years later because you look back, there was a pretty decent uplift in Sydney from 2013. But, you know, you take your lessons and I'm not complaining because we've done well. But, yeah, I think it was something that I was always aware of. Obviously, Valentina and I met in 2014 and we started talking about that stuff. And I think for you, Valentina, when you saw the growth that we had at Kirrawee, I think you realised I wasn't just talking rubbish.
It's true.
Yeah.
No, definitely.
Yeah.
I think actually living it makes it so much easier to believe it. I think a lot of people sometimes kind of go, oh, that's not for me. Can't do it. Oh.
So what would you say to people that, so you, and we'll get onto it in a second, you've now scaled your portfolio to 4 properties. There are a lot of people that fall into that mindset, especially, you know, if young Australians, if you're like 18 to 30 and you see market prices and you count yourself out. You don't even bother having a crack, but there are always avenues here, which is where Housefinder comes in, having the opportunity to handhold people, find growth suburbs in cities you might never have even been to. Yeah. What would you both say, having wrestled with that, having wrestled with the doubts, what would you say to people that are currently going through that?
I think my biggest advice to someone going through that is before you count yourself out, look wider, widen your lens. I think meeting Simon was a massive eye-opener. I didn't realise how much opportunity lay outside my bubble. And I think living in a major city, you just live and breathe this environment, and it's not until you start looking outside or you get someone to guide you to look outside, suddenly you go, oh, I can actually afford that house. Maybe I won't live in it, but it can actually provide some opportunity, whereas a lot of people are of the opinion that I buy it, I must live in it.
Yeah, because I remember meeting you guys in Rhodes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we grabbed lunch or coffee or something back then. But no, we were talking about like your goals, you know, your end goals, passive income, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I think at the time you guys weren't really thinking about buying in interstate at all. You know, but I think, when did we meet? I think it was maybe 4 years ago, something like that. 2021 or 2020 maybe. Yeah. So anyway, we talked about, you know, your goals and what you wanted to achieve, and we ended up with a property in, the first property we bought was in Brassel, which is obviously in Brisbane, Queensland, in an area called Ipswich. And I remember when I sent that property to you guys, you had a lot of reservations about the location of Brassel, because anyone who knows Brassel,
I never heard of it.
Never heard of it, but if you look on the map, it's like at the very edge of the city.
What's it near?
Nothing.
There you go. Yeah. Oh, yes. So it's a case of you've never heard of it, and then you look on the map, and then it almost makes it worse, like in that sense, because you're so far out.
And it's one of those things, like at the time when we were buying heavily in Ipswich, we noticed that Ipswich was starting to change, right? And this is one of the things that data doesn't tell you, because you have to be on the ground to see, you know, the type of people buying houses shift, right? From, you know, maybe a lower income or, you know, investors to the sort of young families that started filtering in. And then that's when I think, okay, cool, this area is changing rapidly now. It's starting to gentrify. And that's when you should really look into buying those areas, because that's when these areas start to grow. Yeah. But by the time Ipswich or Logan or any of these areas in Brisbane, is reflected as a good area, like good incomes, good demographics, good owner-occupier ratio, it's too late. You know, the ship has sailed, right? It's grown. And I think the evidence suggests that, because we bought that house for $420. Yeah. And now we recently got it revalued at $800 and $2,000. Yeah. And that's only been about, you know, 4 years or so. So basically doubled in value in 4 years.
It's wild.
And interestingly, I remember buying heavily in Ipswich and Logan and all these areas. And the narrative was like, you're crazy. You know, why would you buy in these areas that are dodgy and high crime and low socio and all that kind of stuff? The same people that was saying that before are now like, oh yeah, Ipswich is a great area now. You know, Logan's a great area now, but you know, it's too late. So, so it's really important, I think, to make that, commitment, I guess you can say, or that sort of, you know, go against the grain a little bit, be a little bit contrarian and really focus on these areas, but still making sure that the fundamentals are ticked. So it was a big capital city.
Yeah.
We're still buying in an area where the vacancy rates were very low. We're buying areas that are well connected, schools, you know, shops, parks, transport, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And areas that are significantly undervalued, you know. So, I mean, $400,000, what was the house? I remember it had a massive block of land.
Yeah.
The block's huge. It's about 1,600 square meters.
1,600 square meters.
4-bedroom house, 2-bathroom, double garage.
Yeah. So if you just think purely affordability, you know, for 400,000, you know, a major capital city, 4-bedroom house.
Yeah.
Like that's something that is extremely hard to lose money on, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
You know, the only thing that can happen is up.
Yeah.
So I think you did very well there.
Would you put a duplex on it or something?
Yeah.
Would you consider it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think one of the variables that we liked about this particular block was the potential to put, say, a granny flat or something like that at the back, because there is, I'm not going to say wasted space, but space for development.
Yep.
And that was something we really want to look into.
We actually, at the time, I think you guys connected us with someone. We actually paid for a little bit of advice on what could be done with that land in the future. You know, just, I wouldn't say it was going to be a deal breaker for us, but we were curious and we haven't done anything with it yet. But yeah, we were told that, obviously you've got to council approvals and whatnot, but there's definitely scope to do something there.
It was abnormally large.
Absolutely.
Even for Brassel.
Yeah.
Because, and I remember it's quite sloped.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, slopes upwards. But I think that forms part of the valuation as well.
Yeah, totally.
You know, the fact that it was such a large block.
Yeah.
Well, we bought the house, I think it was definitely off market.
Yeah.
But there was some, I forgot, it was 4 years ago, but there definitely would have been some situation where the seller needed to sell.
Yeah.
And I think you got some equity out from that house to consequently buy your next one.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's, that's how we've done things since. You know, we've obviously generated some good equity. Go back, you do an equity release.
Yeah.
You use that to fund the subsequent purchases. Yeah.
And how much is it rented for?
Brassel's rented for $530 a week.
Okay. Cool.
Sorry, is that right? Yes, it is. It's right. I'm forgetting. And I think when we bought it, I feel like it was rented for $450.
Yeah, I think.
You know, so it's gone up. What is it?
Yeah.
$80 in a few years per week.
I think $530 for a 422 in Brassel is a little bit light.
Yeah.
So I think at lease renewal you should probably.
Yeah. Well, the tenants that we've got there, they've been there for a few years. Yeah. And you know what? Like, we do review our rents.
Yeah.
Obviously, when the leases come up, but we also put a bit of value on having a good tenant.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
you want to be fair as well.
Yeah. There's, you know, we do put them up, but we don't go crazy. Like, we actually really do look at it properly when it comes up and think about it.
I know before the podcast started, we were chatting about some of the challenges that you faced along the way, and one of them was the vacancy that you had in one of your properties.
Yeah, that's Kirrawee. I think it drives home the fact that you need to budget a bit smartly when you're property investing, especially when you go beyond 1 or 2 properties. I think, you know, people get a bit scared when, in fact, someone asked me the other day, how do you sleep at night with, you know, with whatever it is, a couple $1 million worth of debt? And I'm like, I actually don't even think about it, to be honest. But it's because we're really well budgeted and we've got cash buffers in place. You know, like if we get a phone call and go, you know, whatever, this is broken, it's got to be fixed, or the tenant's moving out, I just go, yeah, sweet, no worries, let's deal with that. And I just move on. I don't even think about it.
I think if you just think worst case scenario, like if you were to sell, let's say, Brassel or Kirrawee, like you've made so much money on them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what is the risk?
Exactly.
Let's say, you know, you are in a bad spot financially and you have to do something because, and let's say these properties are vacant for whatever reason. The absolute worst case scenario is you sell it and make a bit of money.
Exactly.
That's the worst thing.
Yeah.
So, I think a lot of people that go, okay, you have so much debt. Why, is it a big problem, this and that? And you just think to yourself, no, because if you buy the right properties and they actually make tons of money, then that's the only way to scale your portfolio and build a large portfolio.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you're using the bank's money. Like you've borrowed a lot of the purchase price. And in fact, in our subsequent purchases, really, we've actually borrowed all of the purchase price because we've pulled equity from previous houses. So, it's a really great way of generating some financial stability, I think.
So you're 4 properties deep.
Yeah.
After Brassel, we went ahead and bought Hall's Head.
Yes.
Which is in WA.
Yeah.
Again, I think that was a massive leap of faith because Hall's Head, if you look on the map, is like very far south in an area called Mandurah.
Yeah. Just down from Perth.
And again, the same thing we noticed, back then and even now, if anyone knows Perth, Hall's Head, Mandurah, that kind of area has been considered like a lower socio area for a very long time, but it's right next to the beach. You've got golf courses. Apparently it's like the 4-wheel drive capital of, like everyone goes there for fun.
Yeah.
And we noticed a lot of owner occupiers, young families filtering in, because immediately after COVID, I think there was the whole sort of shift in dynamics of what people wanted, and they have to be near a capital city because that's where all the jobs are. If you're if you're an average income earner, you have to live in a big city, but they also wanted a lifestyle, that was not just, lots of traffic, lots of stress. So areas like Hall's Head, where they're very close to these amenities, started pumping. So once you see that trend, you have to make the jump. But it was a big leap of faith.
Yeah, I think, when we first met you, Simon, we were nervous. Right? It was the first time we'd use a buyer's agent.
That's an understatement.
Yeah. We'd interviewed 3 buyer's agents.
That impression.
Yeah. What were your trepidations? What were your nerves?
Look, I mean, buyer's agents, my attitude at the time was the fee is not cheap. I now actually see it as cheap. But, it's a significant fee that you're paying to a buyer's agent. We'd only just met you, so we didn't, you had some really good referrals, which is how we ended up speaking to you. But it's the first time we're doing things. And, we actually interviewed 2 other buyer's agents at the time before we decided to go with you and kind of suss them out. And I've told you this before, you were the most expensive out of the 3.
Proudly.
Yes. Proud. Yeah. But you gave us the most confidence, and I think we had the foresight enough at the time to know that whichever buyer's agent we used, it was really important we got it right. Because when you're property investing, if you buy the wrong asset, it can be a real disaster. Like if you don't make money.
So for people that are listening that might be looking for a buyer's agent or in that interviewing process, what were some of the things that the other BAs did which didn't win you over?
Yeah.
I know exactly. Because it was the turning point for me. Because I think Aaron had his criteria, but I was the one that needed, I think, the most convincing.
Yeah.
And it was the fact that you clearly had already a property portfolio and an established one. Some of the other buyer's agents either didn't want to say, or you could tell that they were quite early in their journey. And I didn't want someone inexperienced, not for the first one. I think later on, and we're in a stage now where we're actually looking, hey, how can we help some of these newer BAs out? But for me, it was, he's done it. He knows what he's doing. We can trust you.
Yeah.
That was the biggest thing for me.
The main thing, I think, and we've been doing this for 10 years now, we see at the moment the buyer's agency industry is a little bit polarizing, I think. There's a lot of what we call overnight BAs popping up.
Yeah, heaps.
Where they were a plumber yesterday and then suddenly they're property experts.
Yeah.
So I think, yes, having that sort of, experience personally is the only way you can advise or teach or mentor other people to do it. because there's so many things that I've learnt in my property journey that you don't read in books. You know, you don't know how it feels to have a completely trashed property, which freaks most people out.
Yeah.
But then if you have the insurances in place, you know, and you do the right procedures, it can actually be a benefit because after 3 months, you get a renovated property, you get all the money that you lost back to you. So little things like that, little nuances, I think you don't really know. I think it goes for any industry, right? Like if you want to learn how to, you know, cook properly, you talk to the chef that's done it for 30 years.
Absolutely.
You know, so I think it's super important, but probably the main thing is that justifies, from an investment perspective, a buyer's agency fee is whether they have the ability to get you a deal that you can't. Right? So, you know, sending you lots of CoreLogic reports and fancy graphs and charts and 5-year plans and all that kind of stuff is great. But the substance in the fee is really, can you get me a deal that I can't just pick up the phone if I had 10 minutes to get a deal?
Yeah.
So we've always been, very vocal about that. Like, you know, what justifies the fees if I keep making you guys money.
Absolutely.
Right. So that's really the bottom line.
Yeah.
And if you buy a house, say Brassel or Hall's Head, and, you know, in 6 months' time, you pull out 100 grand or 200 grand equity.
Yeah.
That's my fee covered.
Yep.
And more than likely you're like, okay, cool, Simon.
Yeah.
Let's go for round 2.
That's actually exactly what happened.
Yeah.
Aaron is a very avid property looker. Like, instead of doom scrolling, he'll just doom scroll property.
Yeah.
And
Habit.
Yeah.
Should be a buyer's agent.
Next podcast.
Yeah.
but he kept looking at the valuations, you know, just the ones that you can access freely.
Yeah.
And he's like, Valentina,
At the time, yeah.
look,
Yeah.
it's covered within 6 months.
Yeah.
I was like, oh.
And
So when you were just looking at comparables?
Just,
or?
just at the house themselves.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And yeah, we'd made your fee plus some back within 6 months.
Yeah. I think and that's also key to growing your portfolio, because everything else is hope, right? If you go off and to buy a house and, you know, for what most people actually pay above market value for houses, because most people buy emotionally. They buy based on how they feel. And they go, oh man, I really love this house. It's close to this. I love the layout, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And then they convince themselves that, it's, you know, let's say the house is worth 800 grand and they pay 900 for it. They go, okay, it's going to be worth it in the long term. Right. But really they're just kind of like justifying themselves to pay 900 grand.
They're panicked. You also lose the negotiation. That's the benefit of BAs, is that you close like 20 deals a week or something, right? Like, it's quite high, right? So you in a week would negotiate more with agents than people do in their entire lives.
I mean, we get about 100 off markets a week. So most of them we actually knock back.
Yeah.
Right. So we say no more than yes. But the ones we say yes to are what we would consider good deals. And ultimately, I think with you guys, you know, the reason why you kept coming back is really because you make money at the end of the day. Let's be real. So
totally. When I look back at my PPOR in terms of overpaying, I look back at it and the tactics. I didn't know how to negotiate with the tactics, and it's like, if you go up an extra 10K, we can close say, oh, better do it then. Yeah, I really want it. And then, oh, sorry, someone's matching an extra five. And then suddenly in about 24 hours, it's jumped up. And obviously this a few years ago, but jumped up 15K because I didn't know any different. And if you did have someone there that negotiates on your behalf, you don't make yourself that victim.
Absolutely.
One thing that we've spoken about a few times on the podcast is, you know, these suburbs that you haven't heard of. And, you know, you guys look at it like, where the hell is that? And then you look on the map and it doesn't make you feel any better.
Yeah.
How do you go about determining the suburbs? How do you go about finding the suburbs?
You have to be on the ground. You have to see it in real terms, right?
Yeah.
Like I said, data is lagged. So by the time Brassel is reflected as a good area, you could be literally 8 years down the track.
Well, the growth's already come. Like, it's already been realised.
Well, a lot of the times data comes out at census. And census happens every 4 years, right? So you don't know what the demographics have changed and all that kind of stuff, unless you're actually seeing it in real time. Like I said before, it's just about rocking up on Saturdays, open homes, seeing who rocks up to do the inspections. And if you see a bunch of, what used to be, let's say, without generalizing, but let's say lower income or older investors or, being replaced by the young family rocking up in the Mercedes, that's a sign.
Yeah.
And you drive around the area, look at the streetscape, what used to be unkept gardens and, lots of cars, burnt out cars
on the bricks. Yeah.
Yeah. On the bricks, being changed. Like that's another sign. Like, as much as we don't like to generalize, but this is the reality of an area that improves. The local shops, the dollar store that gets replaced by the sort of, cafe, the more trendy cafe. That's another change. The local schools, the local parks, the local police station is a wealth of knowledge, right? Don't talk to them when they're busy, obviously, doing what they're supposed to be doing. But if you rock up to the local cops at the police station and you just ask them, what's the area like?
What would have been your
what are the
reaction
changes?
4 years ago if someone came in asking that?
I'm a pretty friendly guy, so I'd probably speak to someone.
Yeah,
else.
yeah.
I think naturally, because you guys deal with mostly negative, bad stuff. Yeah. If someone actually comes in with positive mentality,
being nice,
probably nice.
all right. Yeah, good. Yeah,
good change of pace.
But you're not abusing me? Like,
Are you okay?
Yeah. He's not dead,
They're wealth of knowledge. They know where the bad streets are. They know what's happening in the area. They know the immediate changes. So you have to be on the ground in real time seeing that happening.
Yeah.
And another thing that I always look at is the price difference. So Ipswich back then compared to other areas in Brisbane, immediate other areas, like next to Ipswich, was night and day in terms of prices. So back then, if you were to buy a house for a 4-bedroom house in Ipswich for $400,000, a 4-bedroom house in another pocket, the Hills area, Alex Hills and Mount Gravatt and so on, back then would have been $700.
Yeah.
So that kind of massive price difference where two areas are geographically very close to each other tells me that eventually the cheaper areas are going to catch up. Through gentrification. So that's another little sign that there's a lot of other things, but generally you have to be there in real time to see it.
And again, I think this drives home the value of a buyer's agent because people don't have time to do this. You're working full time. You might have kids. You've got social things to keep up with, sport, whatever you're doing. You don't have time to do this. And as you said before, quite rightly, every single suburb we've bought in, forget Kirrawee, that was, the best mistake we've ever made. But the other three thus far, I had absolutely never heard of these places before we bought there. So not only did I not have the time to look, but I probably wouldn't have looked here because I didn't know what they were. I think that's another mistake. A lot of people that are trying to invest, they buy where they're familiar with. They'll buy in the same suburb that they already live in or next door. And
I think a lot of it is ego as well.
Yeah.
Because, we all live in Sydney.
Yeah.
And I think owning a property in Sydney is something that...
the bragging rights.
Yeah, a lot of people... rightly so, right?
Yeah.
It's something to be proud of.
Yeah.
But, if you're losing money to have that bragging right, I think it's not the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Looking back, my best, not mistake, but accident, I guess, was for our first investment property. My wife and I did that, which is we were looking in a real blue chip suburb in Brisbane.
Yeah.
And we got outbid and we were beating ourselves up over it, but we didn't know any better because the repayments on that would have been $5,000 a month or something. It would have been negatively geared about $2,500 a month. Now, that at the time we were like, well, we're buying this thing to hold long term and then we'll sell it and then we'll use it and then we'll do this, that. But looking back on it now, that would have absolutely financially not crippled us, but it would have been a ball and chain to stop future growth because you would have had this month in, month out continuous expenditure because you wanted a blue chip suburb, because you didn't go further afield, didn't speak to experts, didn't try regional areas or out of urban areas. And that would have stopped future growth. So it was a very good accident that happened.
Yeah. And things happen in life, right? So COVID was a good example. Many people were just put out of work for 12 months, and if you do have a property that's costing you $2,500 every month, eventually you're going to be a distressed seller. You're going to have to be forced to sell the property. Yeah. So when we talk about cash flow, it's not about making an extra $50 or $100 a week of positive cash flow. That's not going to make you rich, right? But you need enough so that you can hold on to the house, however many houses you have, through whatever you're dealing with in life.
Yeah.
And I think that's super important, not only so that you can experience growth, because these houses that you bought, yes, they've doubled in value very quickly, but still, you still had to wait 3-4 years for that to happen. So waiting is very, very important. But yeah, no, one house after the other, you're 4 houses deep. What are some of the bad things that have happened in property? Because I think that's really important to talk about. We always talk about how much money you made and all the great things that happen. But what a lot of people don't realize is owning properties is not just a walk in the park most of the time.
Yeah.
You deal with tenancy issues, maintenance issues. Yeah. What are some of the issues that you've experienced?
I think my favorite one, because we were able to turn it around or see it in a better light, was Kirrawee, for some reason, is a little cursed. The tenants love to leave.
Cursed, it's doubled in value in 5 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, get rid of it.
Around November or December 1st. Excellent time. Everyone's looking for a rental around December, right? So we know, and we're guided by the real estate agents. We don't manage our own properties. We see that as an investment as well. And we spoke to the real estate agent and they go, look, it's just not a good time. No one's looking. It's Christmas, blah, 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 blah. So Aaron and I decided we actually visited the property and we went, why don't we do a little cosmetic reno on this? Paint, lights, install some new cupboards, just give it a bit of a zhuzh.
They got rid of their 1970s blinds.
The 1970s, yeah.
Back in fashion now, man.
Well, damn it, we should have kept them.
Should have kept it. Added value to your house.
Yeah.
We added some fans, just little things just to make it a little better. So for the 6 weeks, I think that it was empty, we invested, I can't even remember how much now.
I think we spent like
10?
I think it was like 16 or 20. I've forgotten now.
Yeah. So we did that and we got it revalued in January.
Yeah.
How much was it? How much did we put on?
I think we put on 40 or 50 grand. So yeah, definitely.
So I guess the one interesting take there is, or takeaway there is, don't sweat the small stuff.
Absolutely.
Right? Your house will be vacant. You will go through periods where you have to do a lot of maintenance. It will become vacant during that December, January period where it's impossible to get a tenant in.
Yeah.
But if you're buying the right house in the right area and paying the right price, obviously, it's a drop in the ocean, considering the fact that you've made, the house has doubled in 5 years. Like, who really cares if you deal with 2 weeks or a month even worth of vacancy?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, where you obviously spent that time to add value to it, to renovate it as well. And we get this a lot as well. Like, a lot of people come to us and we buy them a house and they come back to us and say, oh, the aircon's broken or something happened like 6 months down the track and they freak out.
Yeah.
If you just look at it take 4 steps back, look at it, is it really a big problem?
Yeah.
Is it, you change the aircon, $2,000 and you're never going to have to deal with it ever again. The first 12 months of owning any property is always the hardest because that's when you get the most teething issues. So I think just looking at it from that perspective is not only important for you mentally, but enables you to keep going.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people stop at that. A lot of people would have been like, 4 weeks or 6 or 2 months worth of vacancy.
Yeah.
I'm not doing this property thing ever again. It's too painful.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So kind of just putting in perspective, is it really a big problem compared to how much money you've made on the capital growth?
Yeah, absolutely not. I think probably, the other difficult thing that we've experienced, if you want to call it that. And quite frankly, it hasn't felt difficult because we were prepared for it. But, we have copped a fair few unexpected, expenses. So I know Kirawee has got a pretty old school kind of combined grill stove thing, which, the kitchen probably could do with a reno. It's not something I'm prioritizing right now, but that blew up. Mm-hmm. So we had to replace that. I think
not actually blew up, just stopped working.
It stopped working.
Yeah, okay. I was like, oh wow.
No one died. Yeah. We had to replace that. So I think that was $3,000. Yeah. And then the hot water went in that property. I think that cost $2,000, right? So these things happen pretty close together. I think it was Meadow Springs during settlement period. A tree just absolutely obliterated the fence, right? So we're doing an insurance claim within, weeks of getting the policy. It may have been Horsehead or Meadow Springs, one of the two. We had a pretty significant water leak. So, emergency plumbers out there digging holes out the front and fixing it. I say that these things are bad things that have happened because, they've cost a bit of money to respond to. Yeah. But we've always been pretty crazy about budgeting and keeping cash buffers. And every time we buy a house, that cash buffer increases. So when this stuff happens,
it's really important to have a buffer.
We're ready.
Personally, I set aside like $5,000 for any house. Yeah. Right. That's usually enough. Yeah. Unless it's like a massive problem, which in which case usually insurance and stuff steps in. But Meadow Springs, I mean, we paid $480 for that in 23. Yeah. And it just revalued at $797.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So in 2 years, you've made $300,000. Yeah. So who really cares?
Why am I getting up at 5 a.m. to go to work?
Why?
Yeah, I'm making more money. Oh, I got to hold them. Yeah, that's right. Right. I'm quitting my job. Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So I think the lesson there is just don't sweat the small stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Shit happens in property. Yeah. You just got to deal with it and then keep going.
Yeah.
But you guys love property so much, you're now taking the next step in your career.
Yeah, we're now mortgage brokers. We've been doing that for about 9 months now, I think.
Very good mortgage brokers, by the way.
Thank you.
We've got some mutual clients.
We do.
They've, like these guys have been through it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So they, like I said earlier on, or like we said earlier on, it's really important to work with people that's done it themselves. Yeah. Only then can you know, what's it like to get equity out quickly and how to do it.
Yeah.
So I think that makes them, so much further than, let's say an average mortgage broker that just gets you like the lowest interest rates and the biggest sort of cashback offers or whatever. That's not going to help you grow a portfolio. You really need to use the right banks at the right time. Yeah. Making sure you're up to date. I mean, these bank policies changes daily. So one day, it'll be CBA that you might be working with that has the best policy or is the easiest to pull equity. The next day might be ANZ. Yeah. So really you need good brokers with that kind of knowledge or first-hand experience to be able to guide you through building a portfolio.
Yeah. I think that was a big part of our growth as well. So after we'd purchased Kirawee, we met Jai from JD Capital. And
had him on this show, actually.
Yeah. Very, very good broker. So we're now working with Jai in JD Capital as mortgage brokers. And, I really do wonder where we would have ended up if we hadn't have met Jai. If we hadn't met Jai, we wouldn't have met you, right? I'm just really interested to know where we'd be right now if that hadn't have happened. But we met Jai, also a really successful property investor, really good mindset. Yeah. We've become very close with him and his wife, Danica, now. So we were chatting to them a lot about this stuff. But yeah, about 9 months ago, we jumped in and started mortgage broking.
What was it about broking that attracted you guys?
Look, I think
all that doom scrolling had to go somewhere, right?
Yeah.
I think I've always been a little bit interested in it. Yeah. I had an opportunity about 6 or 7 years ago with another mortgage broker to start with them, and it didn't happen at the time. I don't think we were aligned. I don't think we would have worked well together, different types of people. So I've been interested in it for a long time. I think I'm just a nerd for this stuff. And as she said, like I'm constantly scrolling realestate.com. I enjoy looking and
Well, finance is so important. Yeah. If you see the most amazing kick-ass deal If you can't buy it, what's the point?
Absolutely.
Right. So structuring your finances, I always say this, is actually the broker is more important than me.
Yeah.
Right. So honestly, because I can find a deal, but if you can't buy it, then what's the point?
Yeah.
So being able to guide people, and to grow their portfolios, as I think you were working with Jai as well, like to financing properties.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a massive part. I think it's often overlooked. People always go with like, oh, what's the lowest rate I can get? I pay, like with my loans that I have, I pay around 1% more than what the lowest rate I can get is at the moment. But only then can you keep borrowing.
Yeah.
You got to use second tier lenders, third tier lenders. You got to take advantage of certain products. You got to sometimes go a high deposit to be able to get equity out quickly. So all these little things make a massive difference. So having that knowledge is so important to be able to help investors.
Yeah. Explain the philosophy, because I know that's something that you and I have spoken about, of being comfortable with having a higher interest rate. Why would that benefit someone?
I mean, it just depends on what banks you use. Like you're not chasing high interest rates, obviously. You're not like, oh yes, this is the highest interest rate.
That one. Get more money.
It's just about how you can keep borrowing, because the biggest problem investors have is not being able to borrow more money. Right? If you're earning an average salary at this point in time, if you're buying $500,000-$600,000 type investment properties, you typically max out at about 4 to 5. Yeah. And then to go to 6 or 7 or 8 is really, really difficult. So banks just look at you as more risky with more debt that you have. So the goal is always to use the right banks at the right time, because different banks assess you differently, right? So one bank might look at you and go, okay, cool, here's $500,000 to go buy a property with. Another bank might look at you and say, okay, cool, here's $1 million to buy property with. Obviously, the bank that views you as more risky, you should probably, correct me if I'm wrong, use that bank first.
Yeah.
Because if you get a loan with another bank, that bank will be like, okay, cool, we're not giving you any money at all.
Yeah.
It's about using the right banks at the right time. That kind of thing is way more important than paying, an extra percent. I mean, it's not always 1%, sometimes it's 0.5%, whatever. But if you think about it this way as well, if you get a $500,000 loan, right, 1% is $5,000, in interest across the year.
Yeah.
If you're buying a house like these ones that we've been talking about, that makes you $100,000 or $200,000 off the bat because we bought a below market value off market deal, is it really that much of a big deal? Similar to, if you had to do a reno, if you had to deal with a vacancy.
Yeah.
I just view it as a cost of doing business at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
Right?
And I mean, you haven't even mentioned the tax deductibility that you could, depending on how you structure it, that you could throw into that $5,000. Like it actually becomes less once you start dealing with negative gearing and stuff. But probably the best way I'd describe it is, what we see is, I mean, there's so many mortgage brokers out there. And what I'd say to someone is, like, you're spoilt for choice. You really are. But if you want to invest in property, go with someone who's doing it, right? We've got skin in the game.
Or have done it.
Yeah, exactly. We're not giving people advice that we're not engaging ourselves. And what we often see is, and you even get it with brokers, that they are just obsessed with the interest rate. And the problem is when you're building a property portfolio, if you get your structure wrong from the start, it's like building a mansion on sand. Yeah. Right? It really is. And it's difficult to pull back and fix it. And a prime example is what you just said, like looking at the different tiers of lenders and how they view you. Like if you already own a property, for example, it's a scenario we see all the time. They might own a house. They've had it for ages. There's equity in it. We need to get the order of things right in terms of pulling that equity out using a better tier bank if we can, and then purchasing from there. But I think the goal is also really important. So when we meet people who are looking to invest, we really do spend a bit of time finding out, what do you actually want? Because again, if your goal is to buy a house that you want to live in soonish, but you can't afford it right now, and maybe you're using property investing to, generate some wealth to do that, we need to take that into account when we're structuring you. Because if we exhaust your borrowing capacity for your investments and get you stuck for the house you want to buy, if you're going to tell us it's in 7 years, it becomes a problem. So you need a bit of strategy, which is we spend a fair bit of time getting that out.
Yeah, cool. Oh, that's interesting.
So for people that work, say, in emergency services that are interested in getting in the world of property, what are some top tips that you can offer them?
Ooh, top tips.
We're not about giving financial advice. We can
Look, I'd say the first one would be to educate yourself.
Doom scroll.
Yeah.
Doom scroll. Yeah,
scroll on
just
TikTok.
move from TikTok to real estate.
Yep.
It's great. Maybe not many videos. Maybe there's a few, not as interesting, but but no, seriously, just educate yourself. I think what you were saying before, Simon, about not sweating the small stuff. I think having the right people around you helps you not sweat the small stuff.
I think having a goal is the most important thing. Regardless of whether you work in emergency services or anything, right? If you're going to invest in property or anything really, find out why you want to invest. And making money is not a why. I would say, why do you want to make money? Is it to retire earlier? Is it to spend more time with kids? Is it to maybe, focus all your time and energy into a hobby? Or, if you are, we get people who are religious, and they want to dedicate their lives to religion, which may not pay very well. So if you've got a bunch of properties that's giving you a bit of passive income, then that's typically what drives you to, not only to commit and to buy more houses, but to go through all the pain associated with investing in property. Things like renovating, things like tenants and maintenance issues, and all the noise that you get from family and friends and colleagues telling you you're doing the wrong thing, you're buying the wrong areas. So to block all of that stuff out over a 10 or 20 year period, you need a really strong reason why you're doing it. Otherwise people give up. After one or two properties. So
For people that are listening that want to get in touch with either one of yourselves in terms of mortgage broking, how can they get in touch?
Probably Instagram. We can share a handle with you maybe. Through Simon, obviously. Simon knows where we live. And also JD Capital website.
Perfect. That is all we have time for today. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
That was Simon Loo and Liam Garman, co-hosts of the Property Unfiltered podcast. But until next time, bye-bye.